Hello, welcome to tutorial 3 for Auburn University INDD 5960 and 6960. For tutorial 3, we are really focusing on animation using Matinee. Matinee is the name of the tool for keyframing events within Unreal, and Matinee is run from within Kismet. The directors at Epic use to create all their cutscenes for Gears of War, and for creating a lot of their environment effects and some of their gameplay interactions. So, just a quick demo. This is a simple script running an animation of a circle that's rolling along this floor. The circle's invisible. Attached to the circle is this particle effect, and that is what's creating that bouncing, the look of this effect bouncing. So this is what we're going to build using Matinee. All right, so what we need for the scene is pull up our content browser here and drag it over here. Okay. We're going to start with our blocks. We're using these just to kind of create a floor in the scene. As always, we'll just go ahead and drop that in. And then we're going to make that block, stick them at 0, 0, 0. Going to movement. There we go. I'll go ahead and scale them out. About, let's see, say 4 by, well, pretty wide, so 96 by 12. Oops. I think that's more like what we want there. All right, and then just like we did last time, we want a reasonable light map on this guy. And we'll get to that by going to Static Mesh Component. Let's close up rendering here and just look at Static Mesh Component. The second one under here, Override Light Map Res, and I think this will be more than enough for us to get a reasonable light map on this guy. And then the way I had them spaced in the scene is about 1024 apart, and I was using 8 of them. So hold the Alt key, drag this guy out, create a duplicate. And you got to let go of the Alt key and then drag again to get another one. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, so that's the ground our wheels are going to roll across. And let's see, we'll grab the cylinder here and drop him into the scene. Add our static mesh cylinder by right-clicking and choosing it from the menu. And where are you, cylinder? There he is, way up in space. So again, stick him 0, 0, 0 to get started. Hit the home key to zoom in on them. All right, probably not the size we need. All right, so let's try something a little more along these lines. And what we care about here, the depth is not really important to us. What we care about is the radius. because that is what's going to give us the arc that our particle effect is bouncing along. So I think that's the size we need. I'm going to take this snap down a bit so that I can place the cylinder a little more easily. Get them on the floor here. All right. That's looking pretty good. And then I'm going to go ahead and center them. And for this tutorial, I'm just going to be doing the center arc. All three of the different patterns are made the exact same way. And I'll go into that a little bit more in the later in the tutorial. But what I'll be demonstrating is creating one. If you want to create the entire effect, you can go ahead and duplicate the other two cylinders and kind of get prepared to do that. But for right now, for the sake of brevity, we're going with one. All right, now we need this wheel to roll. He's not going to do anything as long as he's a straight up static mesh. And you know that because it's got this cyan colored outline. What we need here is a mesh that is dynamic. So that is called a mover. And we're going to convert static mesh to mover. It's pretty straightforward. If you want it to move, make it a mover. So now this is going to enable us to actually roll this wheel along the floor using Matinee in a bit. Now, changing this to a mover also flags other parameters on the asset, primarily lighting parameters. We've already discussed a little bit the difference between baked lighting and dynamic lighting and the cost of dynamic lighting. And by making this a mover, we're automatically setting some of the lighting, some of the lighting settings in here. So there you go, automatically it's been moved from static mesh to dynamic so that it will receive dynamic lights and the lighting calculation will update as the object moves. All right, nothing we have to change there, just a quick explanation. All right, now we need a few lights in the scene, so we'll, let's see, we'll add a point right over our cylinder here. Let's see, add actor, add light point. There we go. And we'll get this lined up where we want it. Alright, so we're going to switch to a lit preview so I can actually get an idea of what this is going to light like. Alright, I think we're going to need, oops, move that back. Thought I was looking at the side view there. Because what we really want is up here. And we're going to need a larger radius for that light. F4 to get its properties, or you can double click it. There's the radius, 1024. We're going to double it, 2048. And there we are. So we'll just start with that for now. The lighting is not too critical. Really, this is more about animation than anything else. So I'm keeping the scene as simple as possible. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this light out across over top of each of those bars we threw down. Bars are important for the scene just because I did want to get I didn't want to spend a ton of time building a scene, but I did want depth. So what better than repeating shapes off into the distance? All right, so now we have depth, so our animation actually looks like it's going somewhere. All right, what else do we need in our scene? We always need a player start, or we're going to get lots of errors. So I'm going to go ahead and add actor, add player start. We won't actually be using this player start. And later on I'll cover in the tutorial how we're actually going to hijack the camera from the player and move the camera to a position where you can actually see the game pretty well. And the player will actually never move around. All right, so we have our player start in. And let's see, I think we're in pretty good shape. There's one more actor that we want to add in that isn't super relevant to this tutorial, but we're going to go ahead and add it in again to avoid the build light dialogue from getting angry at us, from barking out errors. And this is called a light mass importance volume right there. Okay, so the reason we're adding this in is because light mass is, I guess the easiest way to explain it is a clever renderer that bakes out light maps for the entire scene that are their ambient occlusion light maps. So what that means is they fake where light quits bouncing around within the scene. And let's see, where's my builder brush? There it is. Okay. The importance volume tells light mass where to spend its time calculating this render, and we're going to draw a box around our scene here. Now, if you're building a much bigger world, you would want to draw a light mass importance volume around the gameplay areas where the player can get the camera up good and close, and you would want to not include in that importance volume areas that are outside the playable region but are out in the distance. The areas that have been constructed by the art team to convey a large world that isn't necessarily playable. So this volume here tells light mass what's important, what isn't. So we've got a box drawn around our scene here. And we'll go ahead and from the builder brush, right-click volumes, just like we did with the triggers in the last tutorial. Right-click volumes, and we're going to create a light mass importance volume. Pop. All right. And hit the B key, get rid of the builder brush. There's our importance volume. All right. So at this point, we should be able to build the scene real quick. And let's see, map needs light rebuilt, and we need to set the kill Z. No problem. Just like last time, we are going to set kill Z through View, World Properties. And then here underneath Zone Info, kill Z. And it's not really relevant to this game that we're making, but we'll go ahead and set it to -1024. All right, build our paths again. All we have to do is build lights. All right, I'm going to set the lighting for now to preview so we don't have to wait forever. And we're using light mass, building BSP, and building static. Go for it. All right, our lighting is built. Let's go ahead and save our map. All right, now we're ready to actually get into it. 15 minutes in, and now we can actually get to animating. This is where the fun begins. All right, let's head up here to the K button, Kismet, which we are well aware of now. All right, and where we want to begin with all of this is with a matinee. So we talked a little bit about creating actions and creating events. So actions are effects and events are causes. Well, now we're going to create a new matinee, which is, at the end of the day, it's really a way to measure time. A way to measure time within the game. And when you can measure time, you can tell things to happen over time. And since we're working in 3D here, we can tell things to behave a certain way over time and over distance and three directions and 3 dimensions. So we want this wheel to roll. That's our primary goal right now. And preferably we want it to roll completely 8 times. So these bars are important because we want the wheel to complete its cycle when it hits each of these bars. That's going to become more obvious why that's important when we're doing the particle effect, and you can see when it's making contact with each of these bars. All right, so let's make it roll already. I'm going to double click Matinee and open up this keyframe right here. That's what you're going to see when you open up Matinee. And yeah, screen space at this point comes at a premium. In Matinee, I'm going to right click over here in this left column and create a new empty group. And this group is going to hold the animation information for this wheel. So we're going to call it, cycloid 01. We'll talk about why it's a cycloid later. All right. Now we know what we want to do to this cycloid is make it move. So I'm going to right click this new group I've created. Right click that. And I'm going to add new movement track right here. Add new movement track. All right. Now, what we're looking at here is time, literally. So this bar right here sitting at 0 seconds, and these red anchor points here are saying your animation is 5 seconds long. You can see 3, 3.5, 4, 5 seconds. So right now we have a 5-second long animation of nothing yet, because we just have a keyframe that is holding on to our wheel's initial position, but we haven't told it where to go. Now what we know is we want it to end up at the end of all these bars. So let's look at the top view here real quick. All right, we want it to end up here at the end of those bars. And for the sake of this demo, we want it to take 2 seconds per bar, totaling out at 16 seconds. So I'm going to grab this red anchor point and move the length of our animation all the way out here to 16 seconds. All right, so there we are at 16 seconds. Now, again, our wheel doesn't know what it needs to do over the course of these 16 seconds. So I'm going to move our scrubber here all the way to the end of the animation at 16 seconds. And this is what's going to tell the Matinee where to drop the next keyframe. So right here in the top left, this tiny little button, which is massively important and completely understated in the UI, that's where you add a keyframe. So we're going to add keyframe by clicking it. All right, now our animation knows we want something to happen from here to here over the course of 16 seconds. So the way we tell it what's going to happen is by clicking this keyframe. We've highlighted it. We are now editing this keyframe. We're going to use the 3D view to tell this keyframe what information it needs. So with that highlighted, I'm going to go back to this view over here. I'm going to change my snap to 1024 so that I know I position this wheel exactly where it's supposed to land 16 seconds later. So I'm just dragging it to that last bar there. And here you can see a line that represents your animation. And this line is incredibly informative, especially when you're doing camera paths. Each knot in this line represents each frame in your animation. So you can see how frequently your animation is updating. And this becomes a lot more powerful later on when you are adjusting animations that change in velocity over time. And you can see how close or far apart those knots are from one another. And it'll tell you if the knots are very far apart, you understand that what is moving is going to move very quickly because it's traversing a lot of distance between those knots. And then if the knots are very, very tight, you're talking about something that's moving very, very slow. All right, so in this example, okay, so by default, these keyframes are dropped into your scene and they are red. When they're dropped in and they are red, that means that they are going to ease in and ease out of the animation. And you're going to end up with a animation curve that looks like this. Now, the way I got to this view is by clicking this yellow button here, turns on who in this list displays in your curve view. Now I've got it turned on in the curve view. What the curve view is showing me is 3 axes, X, Y, and Z, 2 of which are flat. The only axis that I changed by pulling it was the red axis. You can see that this is the animation we created over the course of that 16 seconds. Now for this demo, we do not want a smooth curve. We don't want this to ease in and ease out. We're going to keep it as simple as possible because we're not ready to worry about Bezier handles and whatnot to make the curve work the way we want it to. We're going to make this simple by right-clicking this keyframe right here at 0, our start keyframe. And we're going to change this interp mode to linear. That means when this animation starts off, the object will maintain the exact same velocity through the entire animation. So this greatly simplifies the demo. All right, so we now have a cylinder that'll move along this line. And if you would like proof of it, you can come up here and you'll see your play controls. So let's hit play. Oh, there it goes. It's cruising. And you'll notice it never speeds up or slows down. And that's what we want. All right, let's play it again. Hit stop. That resets our animation. I'm going to check it out in perspective here. All right. Again, this time we'll just let it loop. Oh. So here's something I need to cover. Right now it is looping within a preview area that we have set. The preview area by default is set to the first second of your animation. This preview area for this demo is not important, but for someone working on a very large animation that might traverse many minutes, but all you care about is working on 15 seconds of it, you can set this to just repeat the animation within a smaller part of your overall animation. So for now, we're going to go ahead and just drag this all the way out. We want to see everything. Stop. Just to reset it all, hit loop, and there goes our wheel off into the distance. Now later on, we're going to turn that wheel off. It's going to continue to animate, but it won't be visible because we're just going to use it as a guide for our particle effect. And that's where the fun really starts up. Okay, so at this point we have our cylinder here just moving along the bars, but it's not actually rotating, so it's not a convincing roll by any means. It's just sliding along. We actually have to make it rotate to actually create a convincing roll. So the way we're going to do that is by adding a rotation to the cylinder. The way we add a rotation is basically the same way we add the translation, the new location. You can grab the object, set a new keyframe, and then move to the rotate tool and rotate it that way. But for the sake of this demo and for keeping things pretty simple, instead we're going to do this numerically, just straight through Matinee, and by setting values specifically. So what you'll want to do is with Matinee open, you will want to select show rotation on curve down here in the properties. If you don't see the properties, you can always just come up here. There it is, window properties. So we'll toggle on show rotation on curve editor. We're going to toggle off show translation. We don't care about that one anymore. All we care about is rotation. And there is no value set for the rotation of this animation. It's just flat. It's not rotating. We're going to go ahead and turn off the two axes we don't care about. All we care about is this last one. This is the axle the wheel is going to roll around. This is the axis right here that we are interested in. We're going to select that keyframe, right-click it, and then choose Set Value. Now we know that we want this circle to complete its rotation once every 1024 units, every time it hits one of those bars, basically. And we know that we want that to happen 8 times. So we're just looking at 360 units times 8, so that we get 8 revolutions out of this wheel. So that's 2,880. We know that this animation is going to be linear already because of the green keyframe, and rotation and translation are hosted on the same level here. And now, if we play it, you should actually see the vertices changing. You can see, the edges rolling a little bit, but it's still kind of hard to see. But it is there. It actually is rolling. All right. Now, to get the effect we're actually after, we need to add the particle effect. And the way we make that particle effect look like it's bouncing along is, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but basically we're using the mathematical theorem of the cycloid to draw a convincing arc through the air. And the way that's drawn is by, in terms of the cycloids, by creating a cylinder, drawing a point on the edge of it, rolling it, tracing that line, and you get this arc that is a very, very, very convincing, arc through the air. We're doing the same thing here, only with an animated cylinder and a particle effect that is going to draw this line. So we have to append the particle effect to the outside of that cylinder. And then we need the particle effect to inherit the animation from the cylinder. And the way we're going to do that is by attaching the particle effect. We'll get into that later. We'll go ahead and kill that for now. So we'll go to the generic browser here, content browser, excuse me, and go ahead and fully load the sample package. You'll notice there's a new section called Particles. Grab Cycloid Particle Blue. That's what we're after. Just highlight that. And then come here into the scene, and we'll want to drop it somewhere here in space. So add emitter cycloid particle blue. There we go. That's what we want. I'm going to remove this old particle. We don't care about him. All right, this is what we care about. It's this new particle. We want it to be in the location that that dot was on the cylinder. So we want it on the edge. So I'm going to move it to where the cylinder touches the bar down here. All right, so it's all centered up. It's where I want it to be attached. So now we need to attach it to the cylinder. And that is done through Kismet, through script. We want that to happen as soon as the level is loaded. So new event, level loaded. There we go. That's an old one. We don't care about that one. All you guys care about is adding level loaded. Again, that is new event, level loaded. As soon as the level is loaded, we want to tell the game to take an actor and attach it to another actor. So we're going to go to new action, actor, attach to actor. There we go. Target is pointing at the parent. In this case, it'll be the object driving the animation. So we select our cylinder here, and we're going to create new object variable using interp actor 0. So now we know he's the parent. And then we want our particle system to inherit that animation. So I'm just going to grab the particle system, And here, create new object variable using emitter1 under attachment. All right, so now they're attached, but our animation doesn't know that it's supposed to fire off because there's nothing to tell it to. It's just sitting here. You'll see right here it says play. You got to plug something in there for this Matinee to ever know what to do. We know from the last tutorial that Kismet's a sequence of events. There's nothing here to push that Matinee forward. So we'll go ahead and say, now that these two guys are attached, play this Matinee, and so that I can preview it. We're going to undo this later on because later a swipe is going to start this animation. But for the sake of proving our animation, we're going to attach it. And we want it to happen over and over again. So we're going to go down here to looping, make sure that's toggled on. And then while we're at it, we're going to go ahead and set rewind on play. And this is going to guarantee that every time our animation is kicked off, it starts at the beginning. This is what allows us to start and stop the animation and to always have our cylinder begin from the beginning. So click that on. All right, so let's see if we've gotten to where we want to be. What we're going to do now is go ahead and hit play from here. We're going to start at the player start, which is not where our final camera position will be. But we're going to use a little console command to cheat our way into a better position. All right, the wheel's rolling. Particle effects there. It's hard to see the effect though, so I'm going to hit the tilde key. Type in ghost. The game's going to respond. You feel ethereal. Now if you use your WASD keys, you'll be able to just float around to wherever you want in the scene. All right, looks like we got the effect we're hunting for. There's the arc. Now of course, the illusion's destroyed because that cylinder's drawing. So we're going to turn that cylinder off. Go ahead and save your map. This is a pretty good place to be. Okay, so cylinder has served its purpose. I'm going to select it, hit F4, close up all these old properties. Now what we're going to do is go into Dynamic SM Actor, and then we're going to go to Rendering, and we're going to toggle Hidden Game. We want to see it in the editor so that we're clear on what's going on, but we want this hidden in the game. And then with it hidden in the game, we don't want to pay any penalty for lighting it. So we're going to go down here to lighting and we're going to just turn everything off. All right. So now let's see what our effect looks like. So there we go. Again, we're going to hit tilde to get into a better position. You can type in ghost again or just hit the up key and it'll go to your last command. Hit enter. The up arrow, I should say. All right, we're going to fly up here, pushing up to the side. Turn the camera so we can see a little better. Yep, that's what we want. That is our particle effect looking like it's jumping along using the rotation of that cylinder. All right, believe it or not, that's the hard part. Most of it's done. Okay, now this was all about building a drum machine. So we know that we can animate objects over time. We know we can move particle effects over time. Now what we want though is audio. Because like we've talked about before, anytime you want to give a player some feedback within the game for something they have done, you should consider redundant feedback. We should be looking at motion, color, and audio all at the same time as often as possible. So we need to add audio. It's pretty straightforward. Add new soundtrack right down here. And I got to that by right-click Cycloid 01 here. This is the group. Right-click that group. Go down to Add New Soundtrack. All right, so now we have a track where we can add keyframes that says, hey, audio, play at this point. Pretty straightforward. Now, this track is going to want to know what sound cue you want to play when you drop a keyframe. So before we go any further, let's run over here to the generic browser, grab our sound. Bass drum sound cue. That's a new one I've added. So there we go. Well, yeah, we'll just use bass drum for now. You'll also find the tama drum, steel drum in here, and a cymbal. Tell you what, I actually changed my mind. We're going to go with the drum. All right, I have it selected. Now I want to add a keyframe here at 0, because as soon as the animation starts, we want that first hop to start with a beat. So here's our understated add keyframe. There you can see the audio has been added, and you can see how long it lasts for. And we want this to drop every 2 seconds. Why? Because we know every 2 seconds our wheel has gone 1,024 units to this next bar. We know that because when we set up this animation, we created a 360-degree roll every 2 seconds. Because the animation is 16 seconds long, and we have 8 bars that this thing rolls across. That's why we know it's every 2 seconds. And all I'm doing is just dragging the bar 2 seconds forward. Doesn't have to be super exact. I mean, we're talking about milliseconds here. And then I am not dropping 1 at the end. The reason being is that this animation loops. So second 16 immediately hands off to second 0. So if I added another drum beat here, I'd actually be playing it twice within a thousandth of a second. We don't want that. So there we go. There's our drum beat. Sounds like it's working. Let's take a peek over here. Oh, there we go. All right, so now we've got motion, sound, particle effects, all in less than an hour. All right, you might notice that it sounds like the drum beat is getting further and further away from you, and that is because of a little work that I did in the sound cue. And we'll cover sound in more detail later on. We do need a way to toggle on and off the particle effect that we've added here, because we don't want it to always be on in the scene. We only want it to be on when this animation has been started off. And then when the animation's been stopped, we need it off. And the way we're going to handle that is by add new particle group. I have my particle selected in here so that it's going to grab that particle. I'll call this, call it jump. Call it whatever you want. It's just a group. And we know that here at keyframe 0, we want this to be toggled on, so we're going to add a keyframe. Our options are trigger, toggle on, which is what we want. And then over here, when the animation's turned off or is ended, I know we want to add another one. It's turn off. All right, so now our jumpy particle effect will only be on when the animation turns on. So long as we hit one more thing. By default, particles will always be on all the time in a scene once you drop them in. You can see them sitting there tearing away. Hit F4. And then underneath particle system here, again, we'll just close up all that extra stuff. Oh man. We don't care about any of that. All we care about is right here in the particle system. Auto activate is always on by default. We don't want that. We want to control when he turns on and off from our animation. So auto activate is off. All right, so now our particle only turns on when the animation is started. All right, so we're all set there for that particle effect. You'll see here it's been attached. because I had it selected when I created the group. Now we want to create all of the explosions that occur when the jumps happen. So we have a different particle effect in here for that guy. Let's go to particles. We're working with the blue particles for right now, so we'll say cycloid particle boom blue. Boom is what I use to say this is the one that explodes. So we're going to select that guy, and then we are going to drop him down in the locations where the revolution of the wheel ends. So add emitter, cycloid particle boom blue. So we're going to add one here at 0 at the start of our animation. All right, he's going to be right on top of the particle that spins. And then we know that we want a new one on each of these. Now the reason we're not just animating him with the wheel as well is because the awesome thing about particles is that they inherit velocity. That means that if I attach this particle, this exploding particle, to the bottom of this wheel and then turned it on and turned it off as it traveled along this route here, then those particles wouldn't just explode straight out. They would explode, and then for some amount of, for again milliseconds, they would inherit the velocity of the wheel and start traveling in different directions based on the direction of the wheel. I don't know where I got offset here, but feel free to line up all of your particles along the axis. All I'm doing is just moving them over so that the scene's nice and neat. Along with this guy. Get him back in the center again. Again, this is just quick cleanup I'm doing for my own sanity. All right. So now we have all these exploding particles in place. Now, just like the last one, we do not want all of them firing off as soon as the world loads. So we're going to make sure all of them are set to auto-activate off. All right, F4, auto-activate, go away, turn that off. All right, now how do we turn them on and off when the animation says, I'm in the right location? Well, at this point, that's pretty straightforward. We're going to create 8 new object groups for each of these particle effects. All right, so let's grab the first one here. It's particle emitter 3. Particle emitter 1 was our initial one. We can verify that just by looking in Kismet, saying, okay, emitter 1's that jump one I made. All right. So what I care about now is this guy, emitter 3. So I know his name because I can hit F4 and read it right there. Drag him back into place. With him selected, we're now going to go here into Matinee, add new particle group. It's right the first time. Add new particle group, and we're going to call it Boom 1. All right, and it's gray. You can see here for some reason did not connect it up. So we'll just create our object variable we need here by selecting it there in the scene, and then new object variable using emitter 3. This happens a lot, so Kismet tries to create shortcuts for you, but it works sometimes, not all the time. All right, now that that is hooked up, we need to add a keyframe for when we want it toggled. So we're going to select this bar here, and we know that we want this to kick off at frame 0, along with that drum beat. And we'll be adding these explosions for keyframes all the way up to 14, but we're not going to add one to the very end, because again, since these inherit velocity, when this animation loops, if we added one at the end, you'd see that particle effect get drug across the screen back into its initial position. So, all right, have this selected, it's hooked up. We're going to go ahead and add a keyframe, and this time we just want it to trigger. Trigger is our goal here, so boom. So that one's now going to trigger at keyframe 0. Now we'll come back and do the next one, which will be a little easier because we don't have another particle sitting right on top of it. Select it here, open up our Matinee, add new particle group, boom 2. All right, again, for some reason it didn't automatically connect it. So we'll just do that real quick by hand. Right click, object variable 4, and then, oops, I don't want you full screen. All right, now we will scroll this over to 2. We know that we want this to fire off at 2, and it's boom 2 that we want to fire off at 2. We'll add a keyframe there, and we want it to trigger. All right, 2 of 8 done. Let's knock out the rest. New particle group, boom 3. Oh, this is happening because I'm double clicking Matinee. If I just keep Matinee open, then we won't lose these connections. I was closing Matinee so that you can more easily see what I'm doing, but forget that moving forward. Okay, so now we know that we want this one at 4. So we got our scrubber here in place, got the right group highlighted, add that keyframe trigger. All right, we'll go ahead and move this to 6. And we'll grab the next one, add new particle group, boom 4. It's connected correctly because I didn't close Matinee and then double click it. It's already got it highlighted here. Add a keyframe, trigger. All right. I'm going to go ahead and close the properties. We don't need that. We want the screen space here. All right. Again, if you need to bring the properties back, it's just underneath window. Window properties. But we don't care about that now. Add new particle group, boom 5. Boom 5 occurs at 8 seconds. Trigger it. All right. Now we want to boom 6 at 10 seconds. New particle group, boom 6. Highlight that. Got the scrubber in the right place. Add a keyframe. Make sure it's trigger. All right, let's do it again. Got our particle, boom 7. Add a new particle group. Now, all of this is intended to just kind of give you a foundation for working in Matinee. Matinee and Kismet are insanely powerful. This is not even scratching the surface of what Matinee can accomplish. But it gives you an idea of what you can manipulate over time. We are moving things, translating things, turning them on and off, queuing audio. And this is intended to be enough to get you thinking about what the other possibilities are and to start digging through other tutorials online, as well as just looking through the menus that you have in Matinee, and you can see the literally, I mean, thousands of things that you can manipulate through Matinee, from interpolating materials over time so that you can have blinking signs, blinking lights, changing textures. It's amazing how much that you can change through here. I mean, not to mention that this tool is responsible for all the cutscenes and gears. Talking about driving camera position and driving character animations and particle effects. It's amazing. All right, so there we go. We now have an animation with all of our explosions, our rotations, our sounds. Let's check it out after we save. All right, I see the explosions. All right, ghost. Up, 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 up. Looks like we're in pretty good shape. Okay, from the angle we were at and play from here, I was concerned that everything was not lined up correctly. I'm going to double check my work. I'm going to open up Matinee. Here's all my animations, and I know that the effects won't look right, but from this camera position, I can make sure that at least everything's lined up correctly. Hit play. All right, that's correct. Yep. Yep. It looks like from here, everything is firing off where we want it to and when we want it to. So we're in good shape. All right, now this part of setting up the animation is done. Now we have another kind of animation we need to set up where we are briefly, I mean brief, like over the course of a millisecond, moving the camera into the camera position that we want so that we can actually see the game from the angle that we want. We don't want the player to begin from the perspective of play from here. We don't even want them to use the same standard in-game camera. So we're going to use a Matinee to reposition the camera so that the player is looking through a location that we dictate. So the first thing we need to pull all this off is we're going to take some controls away from the camera, away from the player. So we're going to toggle input as soon as the world loads up. Toggle input, just like last time, is new action. Toggle input. So we're going to turn off and look under the properties. We want to turn off movement and we want to turn off turning. So the player is frozen. Now, this is not affecting the player yet, of course. We need to tell it to affect the player by going to New Variable, Player, Player. All right, there we go. Now, we need to go ahead and just toggle the HUD. We're not interested in that either. We're creating our own input type. Hide, and again, there's just the player, so we'll reuse that variable there. All right, now we want to grab that camera and move it to where we want it to be. So the way we're going to do that is first by going into the 3D scene here, and we're going to move the perspective window into something that approximates how we want the world to be seen from. Now, you're not going to get it right on the first try, nor am I. This is going to take a few tries. It's just the way of things. All right, so there's the camera in the perspective window about where we want it. We want to create an actual actor. That is something we can select in the scene and script to. The way we're going to create it is by going and clicking the drop down for the perspective panel and say add camera actor here. So this is going to be a camera actor that has the exact same view as the perspective window right now. All right, so we'll go into another window and look for our camera. Where are you? Where'd you get dropped? There it is. It is the like the static mesh, the blue-green actor. So we'll budge him over into the center here. You'll see that this viewport isn't going to actually update with changing this camera. Not yet. What we need is to create an animation and a piece of script that is going to allow us to actually see what that new camera we made sees as we edit it and get it into the right position. This process can be quick, but it's also probably going to take multiple tries. So we have a camera now. Let's get that camera actor here and closer up. So that's what it looks like. This is our camera actor. It looks like a model of an actual camera. Now, the FOV for the camera is by default 90. It's what most PC shooters begin at, and then they get tweaked in one direction or another to give you a wider field of view or a more narrow field of view based on their goals. For this particular game, we're actually going to set the FOV to something that is very non-standard. We're going to set it to 50 because we don't want a very narrow view, and instead we want what we want is a very, very narrow view that forces the perspective of this scene. We want it to seem really, really, really deep. So we're going to push this all the way down to 50. So narrow and deep instead of shallow and wide. All right. Again, we want to be able to see what this camera sees so we can get it into the correct position. And that's achieved by coming into Kismet here. And then we're going to create a new Matinee. And this one is going to control our camera. Once the game starts, we want this Matinee to continue forever because we are hijacking the camera and keeping it in one position. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on looping under the properties. And then we're going to double click Matinee and go into the keyframer. Now we're not going to be dropping a whole bunch of keys here. That's not important because we're creating an animation that really only does one thing on one frame. What we're going to do is create a new camera group. Add new camera group by right-clicking here in this column, the gray column. Add new camera group. And then this is our game cam. And as you can see, you can, over time, make it move and change the FOV. We are not interested in that for today, though. All we care is that the camera's position is saved here on this keyframe right here. So we don't have to do anything else to get the camera in the right location. And you can now click this little camera button here in Matinee, and it'll give you a preview in the perspective window of what that camera is going to see. So now that we've changed the FOV, it's not really in the position that we wanted. So we will move this camera to a new position that suits us a little better. All right, that's what we like. And we're going to do this again. Add camera actor here. So this now has the position that we like. Let's close up that Matinee. And we're now going to have a second camera in here. Close that up entirely. All right, where's that second camera? You're going to make a liar out of me? All right, there's our new camera that we're going to be using way back here. So we'll go ahead and nuke that first one that just got us started. And yeah, all of this is intentional. We'll nuke the Matinee as well, because that first camera and that first Matinee were just there to get us to a point where we could preview here in the perspective window what the camera was seeing, to get us to a point where we could actually see what we wanted. So now we have our new camera that we like a lot better, dropped into the scene way far away. We're going to grab that, do this over again, but this time we're happy with the camera. So Matinee, looping, because this is going to continue forever. Add new camera group, game cam. All right, we're going to turn it on so we can preview it. It doesn't look the same as it did when we were setting it up earlier. It's because we have not fixed the FOV. Remember, this is a new camera, so it went right back to a FOV of 90. Change that to 50, and there we go. That's the view we wanted for the game. All right, so there's nothing here telling the game to use this camera. If you loaded up the game right now, you would be right back to a frozen person in your standard position. So, just like a TV show or a movie, we need a director to tell our Matinee which camera to use. Add new director group. The sole purpose of this group is to tell the game which camera to use when, because you can add as many cameras as you want to this scene, and then over time have it pop from one camera to the next. That's achieved by creating your new director group, clicking director, making sure this is on the keyframe you want, so 0 in our case because we want the camera frozen here. And we're going to add a keyframe. It's going to say, which camera do you want? Game cam is what we want. All right, so there you go, shot 0010. So from this point forward, the game is going to use this camera. All right, and this will occur right after the HUD is taken away and the input's taken away, and it will loop forever. So let's see what happens. All right. It looks like even in the preview we're a little ways off. It's pretty far away. But from this point, feel free to nuke the Matinee, nuke the camera, and reposition the camera until you're satisfied with its location. I'll tell you right now, for me to get the final in place, it took me about 5 tries. All right. Okay, here's a little shortcut, final shortcut for you for getting the camera in the right position. You can leave the Matinee where it's at, not delete it, and get the camera about where you want it to the best of your ability. There we go. Get it in preview, get it to about where you want it, or you think it'll work when you get it into play from here, because it is different. And then again, left click the arrow, add camera actor here. You'll see that new actor pop up there in the scene. You can see from the side. I'm at this first one, but we've created this new one. Close the Matinee, delete the camera, say continue. Some actors are referenced by Kismet. Yeah, we know. Get rid of it. Select the new camera and then just reassign it to this variable. And then we'll use all the same Matinee stuff. And pop this up. Now, if you do run into an issue where it doesn't look like your camera has changed, I have run into issues where Matinee will hold on to that initial position. So if that happens, don't stress out. Just delete the Matinee and create yourself a new one. All right. So there we go. We've done a lot of animating, and this is the end of part 1 to this tutorial. Part 2 is going to cover the logic that runs the drum machine, and sets up how the swipes and the tempo controller work. Now, from this point forward, to create the other two drum beats, it's a matter of just redoing this tutorial exactly the same way, only with using the different colored particles that I've already set up. These are all the blue ones. You would want to use the yellow or green ones in your next Matinee. And you would want to create another cylinder and use that, or duplicate this cylinder and move it into place. So creating the other two Matinees really is as simple as exact same tutorial with a new cylinder and a new Matinee. And just run straight through it again. New empty group. Cycloid 2. New movement track. 16 seconds. There we go. Drop in that keyframe at the end so we know it lasts 16 seconds. Drag our cylinder to the end of the animation. Make sure the animation is linear. And from there, you just hit restart on the tutorial and keep moving forward. All right, I'll be back with part 2 here in a minute. Thank you very much for watching this tutorial. Hopefully there's a solid basis for using Matinee to manipulate your worlds over time. And don't be bashful about digging in and checking out different settings. Matinee is used for toggling lights on and off, changing their radius. Matinee is used for reassigning different weapons and different components to different actors. Matinee is used for many different gameplay systems that we'll dive into more later. So get in and play around. Thank you very much.